You have 100 days. 100 days to save this country. As you've watched the attempted destruction of this great nation, yes, I said great nation, you probably felt like you were watching violence play out in a third world country, that this kind of thing doesn't happen in the United States. Well, I've got news for you. Elect the wrong person and it's coming to your city. As this plays out with 100 days left before the presidential election, the question is simple. Do you want someone to fight for the peaceful America you lived in? One who respects law and order? Or do you want to chart a different course for America and continue to descend into the depths of despair and darkness? I want you to think about your life 1 year ago. The economy was soaring. You had a job if you wanted one. You could pack your kids in the SUV and take a vacation if you wanted. You could go to sports events, concerts, and enjoy the fruits of your labor unhindered. On a lazy July summer night like tonight, you might have a barbecue, turn on some music. Not anymore. The question now, is it safe? Will my family be safe? Will I be able to protect myself, my business, my property? Will I get into trouble if I exercise my Second Amendment right to defend myself and my property? The man who wants to run this country, who is watching the same videos that you are, calls these rioters and looters peaceful protesters, asserting that they have a First Amendment right to assemble. Let me tell you, most of them are anything but peaceful. They are violent anarchists, criminals, arsonists, looters, haters. Democrat Mayor Ted Wheeler of Portland, the site of almost 60 consecutive nights of shocking unrest and violence, stood proudly with the protesters, surrounded, of course, by his 5 security guards, announcing federal law in the U.S. Constitution doesn't apply in our city. He's all good with the nonstop effort to destroy federal property and the violence that occurs to federal officers protecting it. Nancy Pelosi calls these federal agents stormtroopers, a hateful reference to Nazi Germany. She says the stormtroopers are harassing the protesters. A primer, Mr. Mayor and Madam Speaker. 40 United States Code, Section 1315, requires the Department of Homeland Security to protect buildings, grounds, and property owned, occupied, or secured by the federal government. It also requires that they enforce federal laws, carry firearms, and make arrests without warrants for any offense against the United States. The federal courthouse in Portland has been targeted by arsonists and vandals, literally trying to break into it to burn it down. Now, assaulting federal officers in the process of doing that same thing. The Department of Homeland Security sent several dozen agents who are not trying to be local police, simply to protect their property. The local police themselves are incredibly frustrated because their hands are tied by this leftist mayor. They tweet reports every day of incendiary and inflammatory materials being used by the anarchists and the attempted breaching of the fence, as well as the throwing of projectiles by the protesters. The Portland police have documented this, but have not been permitted to make one arrest. If a federal agent identifies someone, though, who's thrown a device and sees that person when the crowd starts to break up, they have the absolute right to follow and the probable cause to arrest that person for a federal crime. They are not doing local law enforcement's job. They are there to protect against vandalism and destruction of a federal building. This is done throughout the nation and is unquestionably constitutional. It is an example of federal supremacy, where the Constitution and federal laws generally take precedence over state laws and state constitutions, and definitely precedence over dingbat mayors like Wheeler. Now, this operation is totally different from Operation Legend, named after 4-year-old Legend Taliaferro, shot while he was sleeping in his own home, in his own bed. This is a surge of federal law enforcement officers already in American communities plagued by violent crime. In cities like Chicago, over 400 people were murdered so far this year, 50% increase over last year. 2,000 people shot so far this year in one city. Now, this operation is nothing new. There are joint task forces between local and federal agencies that have been in operation for decades and are commonplace throughout the nation. As DA, my office coordinated with the FBI, the ATF, the DEA on joint task forces, including the Joint Terrorism Task Force, to combat gang, gun, terrorism, and drug crimes. We didn't need anyone's permission to fight crime. That Chicago's Mayor Lori Lightfoot would resist such assistance for so long as people died proves she's more interested in politics than people. Now, this effort is not about the rioting Operation Legend. It's about saving lives, coordinated by the United States Attorney. There doesn't need to be a formal invitation for these task forces to continue to work cooperatively. That's what mutual assistance is. So, what is the man running for president opposite Donald Trump doing during all of this? Bunker Joe is hunkered down in his basement, scared of his own shadow, afraid to come out, only willing to speak from a script, and certainly not willing to answer any questions.